What's up, guys? Welcome to Nutmegged, the podcast where a Yank and a Brit talk about the beautiful game all the way from across the pond. I am Andrew, representing our Stars and Stripes, holding it down here in the great state of Ohio. And we have Faisal holding down the crown for the UK, but in the Middle East over in Dubai for right now. My guy, how is life?
Good, man. Very good. Yeah, excited to jump into lots of football, lots of great awards, interesting things being sorted out. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it, man.
Yeah, you say great awards. I say a popularity contest that has no actual foundation in terms of selecting who the actual best footballer in the world is. And I think
True.
that is probably the spoiler alert for, yes, we'll be talking about the Ballon d'Or, which just happened a few days back. As we kick this off, we'll start Ballon d'Or, but first we got to go with the Nutmegged of the week. I will kick this one off, and it's a true nutmeg because it is something stupid that a player has done. Now, this happened a few weeks ago. If you are anyone aware of the MLS action that happens in the United States and the League's Cup stuff that's happening, which includes a lot of MLS clubs and Liga MX clubs, there's so many tournaments now, it gets a little bit confusing because now there's some weird relationship between MLS and Liga MX, but the League's Cup essentially combines MLS teams and Liga MX teams together, and then they start competing with one another, I guess, for a League Cup, but it's called the League's Cup, plural. It has too many confusing things. But the issue is what happened in one of the League's Cup matches. It was actually the final of the tournament between two MLS teams, Seattle Sounders and the somewhat infamous but also popular Inter Miami team, who is kind of like City because they just have a ton of money and now can buy a bunch of players, which they bought a lot of old players. So you can go look at the roster if you've not seen it or really don't pay attention to Inter Miami yet. They have Lionel Messi, which is really the biggest talking point. But that took a back seat because in the final, which Seattle ended up winning 3-0 over Inter Miami, there was some drama that happened after the final whistle. So that is Luis Suarez, you know the boy. He ended up spitting on a Seattle Sounders staff member during that final. There was like this big interaction after the whistle, players getting together, shoving. Busquets actually punched some dude in the face. Like, it was pretty dramatic. There's a lot of content on it on YouTube, so if you've not seen it, go check it out. But not only was this a problem, but it is a consistent problem for Suarez because many of you will know that he has had some other issues in his playing career unrelated to soccer, but more just about his individual character. So add to the collection spitting on someone, which is just gross and disgusting. But he also was racially abusing, I think it was Patrice Evra, which absolutely disgusting as well. Then on top of that, he has bitten not one, but two players in his playing career, which I don't know why your default is to go to biting when you're trying to fight somebody. Like, I'm about to punch you in the face. I'm not going to try to bite you. That's my first reaction when I'm mad at a player on the pitch or something like that. So he received a 6-game suspension in the League's Cup, which doesn't really matter that much because League's Cup is now over. That was the final. So that is retroactive. So carries over into future League's Cups if he even plays in that. I don't know if his contract will be that long. Maybe Inter Miami might not even make it. So the suspension really doesn't matter that much. Then the MLS said, okay, you're also getting a 3-game suspension in the league itself, which is good. However, that is not enough for me because when you spit on a player, that is so offensive. It's gross. It's unsanitary. It is unprofessional. So I think that should have been a much harsher situation in terms of getting a suspension. And the final note I'll say on this is that I have no idea how somebody has not punched him in the face. Of all of the different things that he has done during his playing career, I don't know if it's more because we're in a more professional type of scene now, but in the 90s, if this was happening, surely there is somebody that would have come out that has played against him that either got bit or that got spit on or that seen one of his teammates receive one of these things from Suarez would step up and just punch him in the face. And my take on that is if someone would have done that, that might have solved all these issues for Suarez in the future because he keeps getting away with these stupid things. He does get punished, of course, suspensions and things like that. I think he was punished for 4 months after one of the biting incidents in the World Cup, all that good stuff. But yeah, not cool, my man. Relax, calm down. I get it. I feel the passion on the pitch too. I've shoved some dudes, but man, holy cow, rein yourself in and just at least act more of a professional. Just punch somebody. That's a little bit more normal But yeah, that is my nutmeg of the week.
Unbelievable. It's one of them. It feels like one of the memes that it's like he can't keep getting away with this. Like how? Like it just doesn't make sense for me. Even when he was in the Premier League, for example, his reputation was always there, and now it's taken to the MLS. It's just it is silly, and it just feels like for me it's kind of disrespectful, not just to the players, but for the world of football as well, right? Like for football culture, it is a kick in the teeth when you're essentially trying to excuse the pun, but like you're essentially trying to be a professional footballer. Your team around you are trying to support you to get goals, etc. And you're out here disrespecting other teams' players. It just feels awful. So yeah, it's not good enough. Not good enough.
Yeah.
Mine's a little bit more lighthearted. It's more recent.
Good, thank you.
It's from the recent game that Liverpool played in the League Cup. I think it was against Barnsley, I want to say. I think it was against Barnsley. I should probably know this, but it's the Liverpool game against Barnsley. Hugo Ekitike is the player here who has scored himself on our nutmegged of the week because he is obviously scoring for fun at the moment. Solid player and performances his previous performances are insane. Numbers are growing. He's taken to the league extremely well. And he is playing against Barnsley. It's 1-1. And they're getting are you going to say something? I feel like you're going to.
I'm just taking it in, man.
But yeah, it was. Here is actually no, it's not against Barnsley. Just clarification. It was Southampton. They are 1-0 down, and we have Hugo Ekitike coming in and scoring the 85th. So let's clarify this. Now I've got my actual figures here. We have Isak scores in the 43rd minute. We then have Charles scored for Southampton 1-1. So now it is the 85th minute of the game. Right, 1-1. Ekitike scores, which he thinks is the winner of the game. He then is already previously yellow carded, by the way, which is important. Proceeds to take his shirt off and show it to the crowd, in the sense like, look, I've done this, and etc. As Hugo Ekitike scored the second goal to supposedly win the match. He then gets yellow carded again and then sent off. So that is 2 yellow cards, sent off in the 86th minute, sorry. So now he's out of many FPL players' teams as well, who's playing against Crystal Palace. Red carded. If you see some of the footage, you can see Frimpong, for example, just in disbelief. Like, what's happening here? Like, well, what are you doing? Even Slot is just shaking his head. Is walking off. There's just a sense of like naivety. I mean, he obviously gutted to have done that, but to be able to score the winner, new to the league, granted it's against Championship side Southampton. Yeah, you probably shouldn't take your top off against a team of that level, realistically. But it's a young player. I'm sure he'll learn. But that is hilarious nutmeg from my side. Just 2-1. Yeah, you're taking your team through, but at what cost is the question. So
yeah, different side of the passion of the game. Thankfully, a little, yes, like you said, a little more lighthearted. I get it. You're heat of the moment. You're super excited. You just have to have a little bit more composure. And I think that comes with experience too. Same with some of my players on Terra State. So we were in a match recently and one of our individuals was getting a little bit heated with the ref and was saying things and ended up getting a yellow card just for dissent, essentially. And you just got to have more composure in those situations because you can't keep adding those yellow cards. So now he has 2. And if you get 4, you get suspended, which we can't afford to have him be suspended. So yeah, you got to make sure you have that composure when you're on the pitch.
That's how it is. Sometimes the passion takes over.
That's true. Okay, it is time for the most prestigious and accurate and exciting and beautiful award ceremony in the entire game of football, which I guess, I don't know what the ceremony is called. Is it actually called the Ballon d'Or ceremony?
Ballon d'Or ceremony,
because they give away more awards than just the Ballon d'Or. But with that being the case, the Ballon d'Or is the fanciest one. It's supposedly supposed to represent the best player in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very cool trophy. I mean, I'd love one, just saying. If you see it, it's just literally like a gold, everyone's seen it, but like on a gold ball and like this, like diamond style gold encrusted like that. It's just so nice.
It is cool. And it is like a simple design. I get it. I like it. So I am a fan. I am not a fan of the actual award ceremony itself, which if you're a fan of the podcast and have listened for a while, you know that my take on the Ballon d'Or, it's not the most favorable, but they did happen. So we are going to talk about what happened and who won this Ballon d'Or and some of the other awards, if it was warranted or not. So I know you have some opinions on this as well. Would you mind running us through the male side of the Ballon d'Or, what your thoughts are, and if it went to the right person?
Yeah, of course. I mean, very similar to yourself. I agree. I think it is a little bit of a... It feels like a bit of a hollow competition now, and I think that is mainly because of the players that want to win it, perhaps don't win it. For example, it also it's skewed towards not necessarily defenders. It's more for your strikers, your midfielders, like your defenders. If you're an amazing defender, you're never going to get a chance at it. The goalkeepers have got that side of stuff sorted. You could probably go into the men's sort of like the team of the year, but that's essentially what you're going to get. As a defender, it doesn't really support you. It's mainly for those players who have performed the best for club and country. And this is why it's important. This is the interesting point, right? So like, just from a key things, I was running through a couple of the current status, but so obviously there's 30 people who are currently in the list, right? So a couple of players that you think obviously should be in there near the bottom half, for example, like Declan Rice, for example, 27th, like fantastic player, which is great. Jude Bellingham, 23rd. We've kind of got Alex McAllister again, 22nd. So these are like very, very good players, right? But you wouldn't put them in potentially, like, would they have a shout at getting it? Probably not. So these are like the more kind of, we're going up now towards the mid-20s. You've obviously got Robin Lewandowski, 17th place. And I think there's also that potential that during the COVID time where they cut the ceremony, Robin Lewandowski should have got it. There's just no two ways about it. And I just feel that there is that kind of idea of why not, right? So there's that side of it as well.
He got shafted, I will say, as a Robert 100%. Lewandowski big fan and Polish myself. So I support the Poland national team when they're on and not facing the U.S. men's national team. Yeah, definitely should have won that. And again, just another reason why it makes no sense. And it's not the actual representation of who the best player is in the world. Okay, keep going with that. And then I want you to answer this question. Do you think that the player that wins the Ballon d'Or is truly the best player in the world?
Interesting one. So we'll get onto that, and I'll tell you why in a second, right? So obviously you've got moving into that kind of the mid-20s. So these are now, I think, players I would probably agree that are up there. So for example, Scott McTominay had an incredible season, right? 18th in the Ballon d'Or. Like, fair play to a player of that level to have gone to the Napoli squad, putting some crazy performances, and just loving life out there. Right, so shout out to McTominay. Before that, Lewandowski. Then we're getting into like the early, like the number 11 Pedri, for example, which I'm thinking good player, but really is he better than, for example, Harry Kane, who's on the number 13? I don't know. So then it gets into more potentially the high idea. Potentially it gets a little political, where you support your players, you vote your players, etc. There's that side of it, right? Donnarumma is number 9, which is. I think he's an incredible player, so I think he has to be, and he's the only keeper as well, which is in the top 10, which makes sense. And then if you look at the rest, you've got number 8, you got Cole Palmer, agreed, great season. Mohamed Salah in the 4th place, which again I totally understand. Rafinha in 5th, Hakimi in 6th, Mbappe in 7th, which is an interesting one. And I'll ask you a question back about whether he needs to be higher up, but he's currently 7th, 1 place higher than Cole Palmer, and apparently not as good. So players that have been better than him were Hakimi, Rafinha, Salah, Vitinha, which is, he's a fantastic player. So in 3rd place. And then you got the top 2. Now, top 2, Lamine Yamal and Ousmane Dembele. Right now, for me, when I saw those 2 names, in my mind, there was already one player that probably should have got it. Right. Yamin Lamar, incredible Euros, fair play, was the best squad against England, for example, in the Euros. Fantastic player. great season at Barcelona, breakout season, just scoring for fun out there. Talent-wise, incredible. But coming second to Ousmane Dembele. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Dembele. I think it's an incredible season. As a player, he did special things at PSG and great stuff for the French squad as well. So I feel like he had a very, very good season. I feel a lot of this is basically done by the players, voted by the players as well. And a lot of them have seen Dembele's performances, for example. The great season, Champions with the French player, PSG squad was incredible to be the best player. Now PSG with the likes of Hakimi in there as well, and like Donnarumma, for example, just these great players. And that PSG squad, anyone could have. I think was definitely the best out of that. And also, probably PSG were probably the best team. Let's be real, last season.
I agree. He is an incredible player. And let me paint some quick context as to why I am not the biggest fan of the Ballon d'Or award in and of itself, is because it does claim to be the best player in the world award. So whoever this does, and that person that wins this award is touted as the best player in football. Now, it does get a little murky because the voting of how this goes down, which again, this is awarded by France Football. So it's not like it's a FIFA thing or like a UEFA thing or some larger soccer organization offering this out. It has just kind of been accepted that, hey, this is the award ceremony where this is given out and it is just deemed the best player in the world. Like we could start our own. We start our own Ballon d'Or and then we could call it something else.
Could be a good episode, that couldn't it?
Yeah, maybe that's what we do going forward. We have our own ceremony. We call it something fancy and weird. We can maybe make it French just to make it sound official and then give out our own thing. And it would be pretty much just as legitimate. The only thing that would make this a bit different is that it is because it is voted on by journalists from around the world. So journalists are essentially the ones that are selecting this best individual for the Ballon d'Or. It doesn't go out to different committees. It doesn't say, hey, coaches, you get a vote. It doesn't say, hey, players, you get a vote. It's literally just the journalists selecting the award. So that is a unique structure. Then from that standpoint, it goes back and looks at the calendar year. So it looks based on that player's performance from January to December of that previous year. So it gets a little murky because sometimes there's a World Cup in there. Sometimes there is some other type of tournament in there. Sometimes a player has had a good December right beforehand, but that doesn't go into calculation, even though that may have been a part of the season. So it kind of is a little weird how the calendar year breaks down and they use that as opposed to like the last season. So another little funky thing. All of this weird collaboration stuff goes into it to make it not as, I don't know what the right word is for me, but not as legitimate per se. And again, then that ultimately comes down to a popularity award. So it just becomes a popularity contest and these journalists select who they think is the coolest and the most popular player in the world. So really just ultimately comes down to being a popularity contest for me. So that is the structure of the Ballon d'Or and why I don't like it. Now, talking specifically player-wise, I do not disagree that Ousmane Dembele is a great player, and it's been awesome to see him kind of resurge his career because he's struggled with injuries. He's been up and down, but he has been electric at times, but just hasn't been consistent, usually because of those injuries. So it's been cool to see him be a bit more consistent now and be able to play a little bit more regularly at such a high level, and no shade to him whatsoever. However, I don't generally think that this award actually goes to the best player in the world. I will say he is probably one of the best players in the world, though. If I was actually needing to break down and, with my opinion, figure out who the best player is, regardless of position, he would probably be in one of the top 5 conversations for me. Honestly, though, I think Lamine Yamal had better calendar year than Dembele did. If we're looking at it specifically from stats, which you're really not, because it is subjective. That being the case, I understand that, yes, he's so young and he already won, I think it's the Yashin trophy. No, sorry, that's the goalkeeper one, the Copa trophy, which is the best under 21 player. And he's actually the only player to have won that twice now, which is pretty cool and shows how consistent he is. So, I mean, maybe just being able to win both of those, does that mean that, yeah, he's been so consistent for 2 years, maybe he should be the Ballon d'Or? Now, the person that I think should have won the Ballon d'Or is Rafinha. If we're looking solely at stats, he has dominated in a number of statistical categories, not only in his league, but worldwide. If you compare that to like the top 5 leagues, I think it was take-ons, successful dribbles, and one of the passing categories, he was number 1 in the whole world. Dembele doesn't have anything like that. Dembele did not even, combined with goals and assists and separate, even make close to the top of that list in any of those categories. So statistically, I think Rafinha should have won that trophy. Now, there's this convoluted conversation of saying, okay, maybe it's a storyline. So like the last time Lionel Messi won this, is it because he ended up coming over to the MLS and this huge storyline of him making a difference right away, trying to get Inter Miami to win a trophy? Like that was cool. And he ended up winning the World Cup. And that was such a big moment for him. So it's like the final piece of the puzzle to go along with his story. I mean, that's cool. But then that doesn't make you the best player in the world. So I still don't understand the criteria of this, which has been a long-standing problem for me and this award. So when it comes down to it, you have to have better criteria of saying, okay, are you going more for the storyline? If it is, that's fine. Then at least have that be the consistent thing. Are you going for stats, which surely was not the case this time because there were multiple other players that were further down on the list that had better statistical records. Maybe they should have won it. Is it a combination of everything? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's just so confusing to me. So I don't really know what the criteria is for this. And my final note on this is that there was no center back on this list in the top 25. The closest one was Virgil van Dijk at 28. Now there were some other like pseudo defenders, like Hakimi is technically a defender. He kind of acts more as like a winger. He was ranked 6th. So, I mean, you can kind of count him, I suppose. Nuno Mendes, he is technically a fullback as well. Denzel Dumfries also fullback, kind of treated like a winger. So there's really like no true defenders that are on this list, which is a bit disappointing to me as well. But again, it's all subjective, so nothing really matters.
Yeah, and then you were talking about how it's like a popularity contest. We obviously know what happened last season with Vinicius Jr. and not being winning and the whole Real Madrid kind of boycott situation. So I'm gonna get your take on this. So the newest one dropped from 2nd from last season, right? From the last one to 16th. And then Erling Haaland being dropped to also the 26th position as well in the situation. Thoughts on potentially those two players that are probably pretty capable? I mean, Haaland should really be in with a shout. If you think about best players in the world, there's probably not a better striker out there. I would argue right now, him versus Mbappe probably outscores Mbappe. Let's be real, right? So, I mean, they're different players, I get it, but like Haaland as a striker, I think there isn't many people. I would put him in that conversation with Lamine Yamal, for example, as well. So, what are you thinking about that? Is that politically motivated as well?
I mean, I think all of them are politically motivated in some fashion. I think the Vinicius one more so because now Real Madrid has caused all this problem of, say, they're boycotting the ceremony now because they thought Vinicius should have won it last year, which, I mean, I don't know if I necessarily disagree with that. That one was maybe a different type of conversation between him and Pedri. It's tough. With that being said, the conversation around Haaland, he will win a Ballon d'Or and should. Did he already win one? He was against Messi 2 years ago, right? Yeah. And Haaland should have won that one. But that was when we had that conversation again.
But up against Messi, though. So,
but Messi was not at his peak powers. Sure, he helped win a World Cup. But overall, statistically, and for the amount that he carried his club team, he should have won because the records he broke were just ridiculous. And we talked about it back then, too. Like the Norwegian team was not very good. So they're calculating everything within that calendar year. Should they be doing that? Who knows? It's just tough to compare. With that being said, I think Haaland will win one at some point. He did have injuries last season, and City kind of fell off a little bit, and his numbers weren't as crazy as they were. And I think with the injury, like that all combined, I think he should have been higher on this list. But I think that, he wasn't probably in contention this calendar year just because of those injuries. Vinicius also had a couple injuries here and there, so I think that prevented him from playing a ton of time and getting the numbers that he's typically used to. However, I think Vinicius should be a part of this conversation this year. I don't think he should have won because it just wasn't consistent enough. He wasn't on the pitch regularly enough, and his team is shaping up a little bit differently now. Like with Mbappe in the fold, he's not the main man anymore. And now there's that conversation of who is, how did they play well together? They're still kind of learning it. And Mbappe seems to be now more the main man, which is probably a conversation for another day when we do a deep dive on Real Madrid. But overall, I think they should have been probably a little higher on this list, but just because of the last calendar year was a little bit rough for both of them, I think it's probably the right spot for them now.
That makes total sense. I totally agree. I think the Vinicius Junior thing from last year was wild, just because the paper furore around it, for example, the papers and everything. So, but just because we're in that kind of political area at the moment, do we want to move away from Ballon d'Or and take us into something in a more of a proper political sphere? Do you want to just talk us through a little bit about what we want to get into from a political standpoint? Because I know obviously there's lots of stuff happening in the US. We know politically there's a lot happening. It's always in the news. Yeah, Trump is always in the news in some capacity. So there's that.
That is real.
And of course, there's more recent understandings between UEFA and a certain country as well. So take your pick, man. Where do you want to get started on that?
Yes, let's get political. Let's talk about the Trump one first, because it probably has a little bit less meat and intensity than the second topic that we'll talk about. So yeah, we're going to get a little political. Now, take all of this with a grain of salt. We are not politically affiliated. We're not political scholars. So for all of those people out there that understand politics a little bit more than us, like, just know we're talking about this with a lens from the soccer side of things. Granted, I will say that I do have a foreign affairs degree. So that was one of my minors I was in school. So I have a little bit more credibility when it comes to talking about actual foreign affairs, which I think this space, with my experience in that and living in the world of soccer, honestly, I probably would be better to advise on this situation to Trump than anybody he has on his cabinet. So let's dive into this topic right here, which it is how Donald Trump has recently talked about, and we all know this, he just says things, but he's been talking about moving certain games for the World Cup, which happens in 2026, by the way, like coming up real soon here. He's going to move games out of unsafe or uncooperative. Those are the two words that he used. Out of unsafe or uncooperative U.S. cities ahead of the 2026 World Cup. And just to note, like, this World Cup not only happening in the United States, it's also the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. We're all co-hosting this together, which I'm so stoked about. I've already plugged in my name to try to get tickets for any game that I'm able to get. So I'm going to try to make that happen. That'll be some fun content that we can get later on as well. But this is a developing story. This just happened recently, talking about potentially relocating these World Cup matches, which I don't even know if he has the power to do that. I guess since he is buddy now with Infantino, I don't know if you saw this video, but if listeners have not seen it, you should go look at it. It makes me want to punch myself in the face. I don't like Infantino either, which not many true soccer fans do, because it is just such a heavily political system, and he's a goofy fellow. If you've not watched a documentary too, you should go check that out about like the corruption behind FIFA. Super interesting. But he has the World Cup trophy, like the actual winner's trophy, and he brings it to the White House because they were doing some media session about the World Cup being hosted in the U.S. and those other two countries. He brings it in, he's saying, this trophy, Infantino is saying this trophy is for winners only, and only the winners are able to touch it and hold it, besides me, who is like the guy that is the director for everything. And he then lets Trump hold the trophy because he says, Trump, you're a winner too. It just makes me feel sick and gross.
So cringe.
Yeah, it is so cringy, which is Infantino's life. So there is that. Obviously, FIFA and Infantino Soccer World trying to cater to Trump and to the U.S. I mean, to make it a big tournament, I guess, which I do appreciate that side of things, like trying to amp it up, which, again, U.S. soccer and our country probably not doing the best of that. Collaborating with MLS and all that kind of stuff. Another conversation for another day. Let's just talk about the specifics of how Trump is maybe going to try to move or force this move from U.S. cities. So no specific cities were mentioned or named, but the people out there are speculating that some of these cities could be New York City, San Francisco, Los Angeles, or Chicago. These are often at political odds with Trump and have had high profile clashes over like federal intervention and security policies. So that's why people are thinking these are probably the 4 cities that he is trying to reference and trying to force them to get their acts together to align with something that Trump wants them to do, which again, I'm not super updated on all like the specific politics of what Trump is trying to implement or trying to force cities to do and all of that kind of stuff. But the way that this would shake down most likely, if this were to happen, if Trump would actually try to change the location, which is already selected because we're getting real close to the World Cup now, it would probably be a legal and diplomatic standoff with FIFA and the city governments. It would get super messy legally. Who is actually in charge of being able to change these venues and these locations, how that happens, how that alters the economics, how that alters the scheduling of different games. So that's going to be a lot of stuff. Not only that, but then the logistics of changing venues would be real tough. Tickets are already organized and are getting ready for sale for all of the different venues and the potential games that are going to happen. Like travel's already been booked for fans for some of these cities. Like it would be a nightmare on a logistic standpoint if this actually happened. So how this would also shake down, FIFA typically resists political interference and will prioritize the contractual obligations that they already have with the host cities. So FIFA will go out and say, okay, here is this award for hosting the World Cup. It's going to be this country. Then FIFA will help facilitate the organization of saying, okay, here are some of these major cities. They do work with like governments, of course, to figure out those cities, but then they work with the cities individually to have those contracts for the venues, figuring out the tickets, the travel, and all of that kind of stuff to make sure everything flows well together. Now, what will really happen out of all of this? My prediction is nothing, because Trump just likes to say a lot of things and he just tries to use his very rough rhetoric to impose his will on certain things to try to make other pieces fall into place, like trying to get these cities to do something that he wants just by saying this. I don't think that this will happen. It would end up holding up the World Cup, I think, because of the legal disputes, and these cities would be mad, and I really don't think that it would be worth it overall. And he really just, in the end, doesn't have the power to do this. So that's what it's looking like. I would love to hear your take as a non-US individual, because Trump is an interesting character, not only in our world, but then all of the media and how he gets portrayed outside as well. And now, unfortunately, that bleeding over into the soccer world.
I mean, my initial take on this is nothing surprises me with the US and on Trump anymore, genuinely. I think we're at a point now where we're so far removed from it I think as the US from a political standpoint. I would argue that it's not necessarily just politics now. It's very much just Trump feeling like, do you know what I fancy doing today? What I fancy doing next week? What is some of the areas that I could potentially have an impact on? And I can tell you right now, when the 2026 World Cup was announced, and obviously Trump was like, this is, and Trump's been inaugurated and was, this is my time. This is one of the biggest, like, it's a big one of the biggest occasions, and in generally in the world, one of the most watched. The final is always one of the most watched games in history. Is always one of the most watched games, and for Trump to even be anywhere near a competition level, to have it in the US he must be like, yeah, this, he wants to put his stamp on it and he wants to have his control over it. So from my perspective, there was only a matter of time before Trump was going to somehow go, okay, let me just start. And I think you're right. I think nothing's necessarily going to happen, but I feel like it's a bit of a threat essentially to go, you states won't have nice things if you don't, come and support, or, just essentially join the movement, shall we say, that Trump's trying to portray out here. Essentially saying, like, if you're not with us, you're against us, and you're not going to have nice things, and we're going to move you from that. I agree. I don't think he'll have moved. I just feel like he wants to have a hand in it, and somehow, I mean, it's going to get a lot cringy, I can guarantee you that, especially around the final time. Even seeing him at the World Club Cup, for example, with the medals, I'm just like, you should not be anywhere near football. Genuinely, like I wouldn't even put out like the UK Prime Minister, that case. I wouldn't even put him anywhere near football. Like it doesn't need to be done. It just feels he's just trying to put himself in wherever, and it really is really cringe. So I just feel sorry more generally for yourselves. That's my take on it.
Thank you. We appreciate that over here in the US. Unfortunately, yeah, it is so divided politically, like not even talking from a soccer standpoint. Yeah, it is just so divided on an individual level, because it's you either are a Trump supporter and you are on the right side fervently, or you are on the left side and oppose him fervently. And for us moderates like myself, it's a stressful time to be in, but it is what it is. And now I don't even have my sanctuary of soccer because now it's bleeding into that, and I hate it. So Trump, I'm going to give you an ultimatum. You have two options. You can either just stay out of the world of soccer. You can go to games, enjoy yourself. That's fine, whatever. Stay away from Infantino, though, because you guys are like bros. We don't love that. So don't be messing with our soccer stuff. Just chill and enjoy the game. Your other option is hire me. So bring me in as your specific foreign advisor with a lens on the soccer landscape. I will help assist with this. And honestly, this is probably something that we should have had. We should have had a position that really is hired by the government to help manage the World Cup being hosted in the US. That would have been cool. So Trump, those are your options. So let me know which one you pick. Thanks, dude.
I mean, I would argue whether I would use the term government very loosely in the US, to be honest, at the moment.
Yeah, it is. It is a little bit scary. It kind of feels like a dictatorship at this point, with just some angry man yelling all the time and trying to say, hey, you can't have this World Cup in that city. I'm going to put it in a different city because we want you to do something specific in that city. Just stupid. But we're not done with politics.
What we can hope for is... Yeah, we're not, of course.
We're not. We got more that I'm interested to hear your take on, because you have a little bit more of a personal experience on this side of things. So continuing with this lovely political chat, again, I will put in the disclaimer. We are not professionals in terms of talking about politics. We are just guys that live in the world of soccer and are trying to talk through it. So this one gets a little bit more intense because it now deals with the lives of individuals. So UEFA is talking about suspending Israel over the Gaza conflict. So this is related to all the political pressure and calls from various international bodies. UEFA is considering a vote to suspend Israel from European competitions. And Israel, kind of like Russia, not just like a no-name country. Like, they have some pretty solid players. They compete regularly in high-level world soccer events. So this all comes because of course, like we talked about, the pressure, but it is because of the ongoing Gaza conflict and military actions that have continued to bring on international criticism. So various national football federations and political bodies, this is still general because no one has come out specifically and said this, but they have been putting pressure out individually on UEFA to act. Some argue that Israel's inclusion in UEFA competition undermines football's neutrality and human rights commitments, which UEFA says this is something that they promote and support, and they're trying to focus on human rights and making sure that that's a big part of the mission of helping propel soccer forward with what UEFA works on. It's a sticky situation because just like the war in Ukraine with Russia being banned from tournaments and all of that kind of stuff as well, because they're obviously the aggressor in that situation. This one is a little bit more murky as well because of this war in the Middle East. It's not been something that is stationary. This has happened over decades, but now it's just at the forefront again because there has been so much essentially war that has now been happening in the Gaza Strip and in that area between like Palestine, individuals that live in that area, as well as with Israel, and now those going back and forth. And a lot of scary stuff, a lot of innocent people dying on both sides. And it is just rather unfortunate to see that this is something that is still happening in our modern day world, and how soccer now is playing a little part in this and unfortunately needing to respond and act to some of the actions that are happening out there. Now, let me just put a little dash of American viewpoint on this, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this overall. Unfortunately, this battle between like Palestine and Israel is a very hot topic, which I don't understand why, in American politics. So it's almost been divided on the sides. So Israel is on the side of like the Republicans and Palestine is on the side of the Democrats. And again, from a moderate standpoint, I don't understand why that was politicized in that kind of way. Like, all war is bad, period. And the disputes that are happening there are not good. And they're causing innocent people to die, which then requires intervention. Because when you get to a point where innocent people that live in an area justly and are able to live there are now dying, that is a problem. So this is now why conversations are happening from UEFA, because it's really becoming a bad situation and they're needing to figure out what to do about this. So with that being the case, with such a heavy topic, what is your viewpoint on all of this? How do you see this, and what is your take?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to kind of put into words what the current status is. I'm going to put it very bluntly. It essentially is no longer a political issue, and it is a human issue at a base level. If you have seen, and I'm sure our listeners have seen, obviously, what is happening currently in Palestine, it is what it is, and we'll call what it is that the UN essentially has confirmed from their report as well. It is a genocide essentially that's happening. That's what's been made clear. Countries like the UK, for example, Australia, I think also France have come out and have confirmed that they are going to say they would essentially say that they want the Palestine to be a state essentially as well. It's like I said, it's no longer a political situation. It's very much a case of there are thousands, hundreds of thousands dying on a regular basis, and what essentially Israel are doing it's now beginning to hurt them. Right now, what people are essentially saying though is that they have kind of got away with what they've been doing for a large amount of time now, right? And countries are starting to kind of understand now this is probably going the way potentially that they weren't expecting. And the support for Israel is dropping more and more and more. And this has now just been proven by UEFA as well. It's now bled into, like you said, into the UEFA and into the football world, right? At a base level, it's, in my opinion, Israel essentially should not be playing in these sorts of tournaments. Very similar to why Russia were pulled out of tournaments. Why is there essentially hypocrisy from that side when Russia was the aggressor? People argue that, of course, that Palestine was the aggressor here, but that's just not true. If you look at the numbers and the figures, and if you know history, etc., that's not at all how it is. So for me, it feels this has been a long time coming. It's something that we all should support genuinely, purely from like a football standpoint. If you've done one thing for one country, for example, if you've expelled Russia, for example, if you've completely given Russia the cold shoulder here in this situation and gone, we're not playing, and even in the Olympics, for example, in the Eurovision, for example, the singing competition, sing contest, for example, you basically completely dropped out Russia and just completely ostracized. Why isn't the same happening when the UN have obviously made it very clear, and other countries have made it very clear as well, that this is what's happening, is genocide? So for me, it's becoming a more and more black and white as the days go by. The other countries can understand more and more now that this is becoming essentially an important thing that needs to kind of be happening, and it's for generations as well, to show that when you do wrong, you have consequences. And at the moment, there is lack of consequences. So it feels a long time coming. And in my opinion, and I will say it from my personal perspective, it's something that should 100% be happening, and Israel should not be in UEFA and shouldn't essentially be playing any more football in terms of where they're currently at. It should not be a case of they've got tournaments coming up. They've obviously got the qualifiers coming up. I think it's Norway and Italy. In my opinion, those shouldn't really go ahead. It's as simple as that. It's black and white from my perspective, and what other people say is otherwise. But that's just my take on it.
I am a little sympathetic to the other side. So when I say that, let me clarify. Israel is doing wrong from a human rights and country standpoint. Governmental things, like, they need to fix that, and what they're doing should be held accountable, and it's disgusting. I never understand this. I know that there's so much nuance and like incredible detail in terms of like Palestine becoming a country, but like, if people want to be in their own space and live under their own rules, like, they should be able to do that. Now, the issue, of course, is the land and the resource and all that kind of stuff. So it's hard. So I won't talk on that point. However, I will talk on the specifics of war and how war punishes the innocent civilians of your country. So we all know that. We've seen the videos from Russia of how like the individual civilians don't want this. It's just the government making these decisions, which of course is the same here in Israel for the most part. So you have wealthy individuals, outside actors, and the Israeli government controlling this and making these decisions. Now it comes back and is negative for all of those civilians, of course, because many of them are dying, which not ideal. But then on top of that, the punishment, it sucks because it's punishing the soccer players, not really the organizations that are causing all of this death and war and destruction. But I mean, you have to do something, right? So like what do you do? So like you have to try to take these small efforts and small things that you can when you're able to do it. So like UEFA banning them from competitions. I mean, I sadly I think is the thing that has to be done, even though it's really punishing people that have no role in this type of war, sadly. And it's the same with any type of a situation like this. But when a country does something so terrible, which Russia and Israel are doing, there have to be ramifications. I don't think that this really will have that big of an impact, but it's just the next step of what should be happening on the checklist. And ultimately, our world just needs to be doing better to hold countries accountable when they're doing disgusting things like this.
Bang on. It's accountability. That's essentially what this is, right? It's accountability. It is something, like I said, needs to be in play. So yeah, I totally agree. I think there's going to be losers on both sides, but that's something that needs to be done.
Heavy topic. Heavy couple topics we just talked about here. So if you're here for our new podcast where we talk about all the world politics, man, join us for sure. Thankfully, though, I will now take us to our take it or leave it section, which will be much more lighthearted and easier to digest. But we will say, before we do transition, all of our thoughts, prayers, vibes, all that good stuff do go out to all of the innocent individuals that are going through living in a situation like this, like in the Middle East, in like the Russia-Ukraine area. Like I cannot imagine what life is like. Like we're so blessed to be able to live where we live and not need to deal with the daily stress of being alive. So really all the thoughts, prayers, 100%. Good vibes, all that go out to there.
Of course.
So now let's talk a little bit more lighthearted soccer stuff in our take it or leave it. I will kick us off here. Now, this could be a whole conversation on itself, and maybe this is a conversation we have someday, and it will never go away. It's a conversation we'll have for a very long time, but I am talking about VAR, V-A-R. So my take it or leave it for you is that soccer was better before VAR technology. You taking that or you leaving it?
The term better. Can you clarify this term, please?
I will let you take it how you want it, because yes, that is a very general. Do you enjoy watching soccer more? I'll phrase it that way. Do you enjoy watching soccer more before?
At base level, for me, the word better is football more enjoyable without VAR? Let's just say, I would agree. It was more enjoyable. You could score a goal, you cheer, 95th minute, limbs, everyone's going crazy. Cool. Perfect. That's fine. Right. Or there's an offside or whatever it is. And it's all like by eye and you're cool. That's fine. You know, I get it. Right. However, what wasn't enjoyable was being robbed, essentially, of very small, obvious from our side as we're watching the game. Right. You're seeing players offside. And you know it's not given. And you're just like, if there was a camera or something that could pull it back. That's what we were all asking for, right? We were all asking for. The number one was, the prime example is that the Lampard against Germany, where the ball hits the bar, goes in. Everyone sees it goes in. We all see it go in, right? And it's not given. And then what did they do? They added the little thing into the ball, right? So the ball has to go all over past the line now. So for me, it's about trying to avoid those sort of situations. Now, VAR has its pluses and has its sides. And I've always maintained on this show, if we have, as a Man United fan, if we have a bad VAR decision, I can tell you right now, 4 games later, we're going to get a good VAR decision, but it's going to go in our favor. That's just the way VAR works sometimes. It's really inconsistent, right? It's going to work with us sometimes and going to go against us sometimes. I hear it. Has it made the game more fair? I would say it's getting there. It's closer now. Maybe it's making a little bit more fair in terms of you can actually view it. But does it make for me more enjoyable? I can tell you right now, anytime an opponent scored and I've immediately gone, please be VAR, please be VAR, please be VAR. And then I can see that they're all celebrating. I'm like, nah, trust me, it's going to be off. That's going to be off. And then they call it and just do that. Cool. Even the penalties, for example, sometimes it's so satisfying to see a penalty so obviously, it's an obvious penalty, and the referee's just blind for that time period. And he's gone, I'm thinking it's 100% a penalty. And then back in the day, it was so frustrating when you've seen a penalty, like a stonewall penalty not given, and now having the opportunity for the actual ref to go off and revisit that right now and go, okay, cool, I see what it is, and make the decision. So for me, is it more enjoyable or is it better? Probably because I've basically just neutralized my own point. That's basically what I've done. I've said it's good, and I've said bad, and I've said it's good, bad. But do I enjoy football more now, just currently right now with VAR? Probably not. Let's be real. Like enjoyment-wise, it's not as fluid. Just from a purist football perspective, than from the back in the days of early 2000s, the Rooney games, etc., when he used to be diving all over, he'd be getting VAR'd everywhere, right? So for me, I would say, I'm gonna is it take it? Or, am I taking it? But I'm saying that if football's no longer better, I'd say football's better before VAR.
So
Is
you're
that a
taking
take it situation?
Yep, you're taking
I'm
it.
taking it, and because as a kid watching Man United in the 2000s, for example, and having free-flowing football, imagine those that Aguero goal, for example, goes in, and you're just waiting for VAR. The game just doesn't click anymore. That feeling of like sheer, oh, what a goal! Like, oh, the player 2 touches before was actually offside, so that absolute worldie doesn't count. I'm like, ah. But at the same, it does make the game itself better, but not more enjoyable. That's my point.
I will.
Long-winded.
I'll also take this. I'm going to take this take and say that soccer was better before VAR technology because this is an implementation issue. I will say goal line technology, for sure. That one makes sense. That's not the full VAR either because that's like an easy watch check on the referee. So, yep, ball goes in. It's fully across the line. Good. That should be given. And I like that that's a part of the game. I think that has no impact on if VAR makes it better or worse. I think that should just be a part of the game. However, the VAR technology for offside calls and handball decisions and then going back like 2 minutes to see if there was a foul in a build-up play, that is too much for me. And the reason that I said it's an implementation issue is because think of the sport of soccer. It is cool on many fronts, but because mostly it is from a refereeing standpoint up to their discretion. So it's a bit more fluid. Now, that is different from most sports because most sports are not as fluid, I guess is the right word. Like play just continues and happens. Like you don't have a bunch of breaks and timeouts and all this stuff like other sports. And there are a lot of like sports, of course, the specifics in the heavy hitters in the US. It's like American football, the number one sport in the USA. They have a play and then they stop. They play and then they stop. So they can review things so much easier. It makes more sense. That is good. Baseball is the same way. Hockey, a little bit more fluid, but a lot more stopping, a lot easier to implement some VAR types of technology. Soccer, so much more fluid. The referee has much more power to impact the game. I like it that way. So the reason overall at the baseline is that VAR is an implementation issue is because they forgot about that when implementing VAR. I think if they would have implemented VAR in a manner that was a little bit less strict of saying, hey, we're going to use VAR to find out if this player was offside, yes or no, or if this was a foul, yes or no, or if, yes, in the build-up play, there was a foul that ended up preventing the goal or allowing the goal. That is such a black and white type of decision-making process. Soccer refereeing is not black and white, which we all know, we all experience. I experience it as a coach. And I think the tool should have been created differently for referees to be more informed to make a decision on their own, as opposed to trying to make it a black and white decision, which then gets shown to the crowd as well. And then all the viewers get to see it. The cool part about the goal line technology is that that's a simplified tool that allows decisions to be made easier on the fly for referees. You don't have to stop play and go back and review goal line technology stuff. You do have to stop. And as we've seen, take multiple minutes, sometimes 10 plus minutes for certain reviews, and then still are gotten wrong by a whole refereeing crew, which are not even in the stadium. They're at some studio where they're sitting and reviewing all this footage, and it still is wrong. So bottom line, the implementation of VAR was done incorrectly. It should have been made more as a fluid tool system for referees to be able to referee a game better and allow them to keep the fluidity of the game going and to use their discretion as opposed to stopping the games and then using it the way that it's been used now. Because I think we're at a point where we're still seeing wrong decisions made. We've implemented all this technology, all this time, all this effort, all this money to essentially be at the same spot of where we were beforehand of saying, okay, maybe we've gotten more decisions right, but overall we're still getting them wrong, which we still give leeway. We know that referees are going to make them wrong. Like, wrong decisions happen for everyone, for players, for referees, for coaches, for individuals. So why are we holding VAR to such a high standard and referees now to such a high standard when it's essentially the same type of a field of play where issues are going to happen clearly? So that's why I am going to take this. I think soccer was better beforehand. I do like goal line technology. I think that should be a staple. I do think VAR should be tweaked and it should be made more as a tool for referees, not necessarily for a black and white decision-making model. Done.
Nice. I think we put it to rights there. I'm going to keep mine really simple here, right? We know Man City standards. We know, was it Champions League? No. Premier League, the quadruple situation, they're not quadruple, triple, treble. We know Man City's level. So I'm going to read you out some figures right now, right? Man City, 5 games in the Premier League so far, right? Manchester United, 5 games in the Premier League so far. Man City, 7 points. Manchester United, 7 points. Man City have had a worse start to the season than Manchester United. Discuss.
I will take that just because their standard should be so much higher because City has the resources. I say resources, I guess I just mean money and backing and talent and coaching. Like, they should be a lot higher, especially on how they have performed previously. So they have definitely had a worse start to the season. That's also because the state of Manchester United is in such a shambolic place that at any point when we have 7 points and are not in the relegation zone now, that's probably a good thing. So I do think again, we'll take it. City have had a worse start. They should be doing a whole lot better. And I anticipate they will still be in the top 4 at the end of the season once they get things going on, and Manchester United will not be.
So you think, have we been harsh on Manchester United?
No, they suck. The reason I say no is because there's a clear path forward, and that City have the talent to be able to dig themselves out of any hole. United, I do not have that faith that they are going to be able to rebound and work their way up a table after not having a great start in any capacity. So that's why no, I think they still just suck. And again, that is because of the club management. And I will die on that hill, and it will not get better until we have better club management. And that is not the manager. That is overall club management. I don't think Amram is probably the best manager, but I'm thinking club, front office, back office level. We're going to suck until that gets changed.
I mean, I totally agree. I think if you're a Man City fan, you are obviously annoyed at the start of the season, but you're not going to be tearing your hair out like a Manchester United fan would. And that's mainly because Man United have just been poor performers overall. But I would argue that Man City still can win games and still got more of a higher ceiling, right? So it's kind of like a series of bad games. Yeah, I get it. But I just found it crazy, that stat, because I just felt we are just awful and we've had an awful bad start to the season. And this is just a write-off. And we are. But really, if you put it in context of the fact that City is also with us, and I think they've got like a 5+ goal difference, and we've got like a -2 or a 4 goal difference. Like, we've got -2. I get it. That's obviously important to imply as well. But in general, like, if this was like a tournament, essentially, like if the league ended here right now, right? Let's just say the league ended here right now. We're essentially just maybe 1 or 2 places behind Man City, and that doesn't sound awful in the large scale of things. but we don't really understand the context. It's bad for us, and we don't necessarily have the players that I think they have. But I can say one thing: we are seeing an identity of Manchester United, which is this really forced 4-3-3 losing. Like we're just an identity which is not working, but it's an identity, right? It's an identity we're trying to push. He's trying to push something in. Right, it's there. It's not a good identity. I'm not saying it's a good identity, but it's a bad identity, but it's still an identity at the end of the day. Each game is the same, but which is the identity.
That's funny. That is funny. That's like, hey, a pile of poop is just a pile of poop. That's good. At least it's got an identity over there. That's good.
Exactly. At least it is what it is, right? Like he's going to go along. He's going to fight to the end in terms of this 4-3-3 situation where we don't have the players that don't match, doesn't work.
I don't think that's a good thing.
We've got an identity now.
I'd rather us not have an identity. I would rather have a manager that is more fluid, that would try different things instead of trying to die on his hill, because he has even said the Pope would not even change his mind about his formational setup. Like he literally said that in a press conference.
Do you know what? I want that in my manager. I want my manager to say, I'm just not budging. That's exactly what you want in the manager to say. That's what you want to hear. You want to hear your manager say, even the Pope won't change my formation. That's exactly what you want to hear, because you know what? That's a manager that sticks to his guns.
You want to hear that when the manager's doing well. You don't want to hear that when the manager's just sitting on the toilet and unsure of how to wipe his own butt. Like that's a problem. So yeah, I think the Pope actually might be doing a better job if we put him in charge.
Yeah, I think we need to close this one because I'm getting delirious. Honestly.
Yeah. Yep. Same. The more I talk about Manchester United, the more that happens. So let's get us out of here. I will end us here, but think about something cool, something positive to leave us with.
I'm just going to leave you with the fact that, do you know what? It's nearly the end of the year. So lock in, right? Focus. You got this still. You still got this. It's the end of the year. You got this.
What a positive message. So fam, we are out. Thank you for joining us on this episode, which was an intense one, but a good one. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Before then, jump on our Instagram and TikTok accounts at Nutmegged Network to DM us with your listener questions and take it or leave it submissions so we can talk about it on a future episode. Hopefully you are able to get on a pitch somewhere in the meantime. If you do, just don't get nutmegged. Peace.